for patch 7.2.5 Affliction Warlocks, and we're going to be going over their stat weights and just about everything you need to know. So yeah, let's get right into it. I'm on live, but I can still talk to you guys about this type of stuff because there are going to be a few changes that I do believe you'll need to know. Goddamn loading screens are atrocious, man. I tell ya.
Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Breacher. Got a little...
Alright. So let's get in here and sort of just talk about what's going to be happening differently for Affliction. So let's start with looking at our talents on live. Alright. One thing that you probably all know at this point is that these two talents, that mainly Siphon Life and Phantom Singularity, are being swapped. Phantom Singularity's damage is being improved and its cooldown is being reduced. What's good about that is essentially it becomes the new de facto Mythic Plus talent. For most cases, the Mythic Plus are going to be running with a build that's kind of like what you would see here, except the only difference is you're not taking Siphon Life, you're taking Soul Conduit instead. In fact, I can hop over to PTR right now, actually. Let's do that. Okay. So we're going to be hopping on the PTR and looking at everything. Go over trinkets, your stat weights for Affliction, or at least what we can expect to be stat weights from the math that we've got out so far. And I'll talk about why things are potentially changing for Affliction in the next patch. So, as we're waiting for PTR to load, come on. Oh, Lord. Alright, now we can get into the nitty-gritty of this and really take a look at what everything means. After we go through another goddamn loading screen.
Straight on the web sheet on an Excel spreadsheet right here. So guys, what I wanted to do was I was wanting to calculate my days played across all my characters. So I just said to you guys, okay, so right now we're actually featured on the Blizzard launcher for the first time ever. Actually, this is the first time I've ever been featured on the Blizzard launcher, guys, which is cool, obviously. I want to know, guys, what my slash played is across all my characters, because you guys are asking me this question a lot in chat. So let's actually definitively find out this this total. I mean, I guess I could do it with an add-on. You guys are saying Alcoholic, but I'm just gonna do it, I guess, straight from the. I'm gonna do it straight in the game. Actually, I'm just gonna do it in days, I guess you could say. So let me just minimize this. Hold on. We're gonna go across my characters. We've got Scoregun, and we have, let's see, total days played at 1110. Right, total days played on Scoregun, guys. We've got 27, 200. We're gonna round it up, okay? I guess.
So let's look at the talent builds that you're going to most likely be using. For single target, Contagion is technically better, but Absolute Corruption it will do a lot better in most cases than Contagion. Also, Contagion has had a slight nerf, which can make Absolute Corruption look a little bit better. But then you also got to factor in the level 15 talents. Haunt's useful in like Hectic, Ad Cleave, and Movement because you can just pop it, then it's on has its downtime for 15 seconds, and you pop it again. But even in Movement, Writhe and Agony is also incredibly useful. Malefic Grasp is good for standstill, single target where you can destroy the boss. From the build that I run, it's like you're pretty much just still using this for a lot of cases. If it's a single target, you're running with what you would run with on live. And if you do that, it really seems to favor the Master Harvester chest piece and the Power Portal with Tendrils. And there's a reason why. Soul Conduit already has, like, I think when you do the math needed for it, it's actually a 25% chance to refund a Soul Shard. But then you also got to factor in Pride As also has a 25% chance to where whenever you cast a UA on a target that doesn't already have one, it has a 25% chance to proc and give you another Soul Shard. What it essentially means for the Power Chord is every 8th Unstable Affliction you cast, you get one for free. And Soul Conduit and Siphon Life are within the margin of error in Simcraft, so basically it means go with whichever one you feel. They're not gonna, it's not that it's going to kill you. Death's Embrace is lagging behind the other two on single target and cleave, but if there's anything with execute, which you can pair with something like Sow the Seeds or even Phantom Singularity, mainly Sow the Seeds with this build, but it's another thing. Phantom Singularity is good to use as well since it's also blocked by Death's Embrace. Yeah, anything like Kill Jade, like Heroic or Mythic Kill Jaden are going to be really good. And that's a good fight, and that's an example of a fight where you can play Affliction and use Death's Embrace and actually do good things. For the most part, this is pretty much your build for Demonic Inquisition and the Desolate Host. Even though Desolate Host you can justify with Phantom Singularity or Sow the Seeds. For the most part, any kind of fight like Desolate Host, you're gonna want Soul Conduit just because Sow the Seeds can do the Seeds can do good. But even then, Death's Embrace will still pull ahead. For fights like Harjatan, where there's like AoE, but it's like stuff you can burst down, same with Zazine, it's going to be Phantom Singularity, no contest. But even on Harjatan, there's still uses for Sow the Seeds builds. In fact, probably next patch you're going to be seeing like a lot of Affliction Warlock stacking a hell of a lot of haste. Because next patch has been a very strange workaround for Affliction, since now we're essentially on the same stat priority as not destruction, but Demonology Warlock, where we're still wanting haste, but on single target you still want to be gemming mastery, but enchanting for haste, with the exception of your neck piece. When you get to cleave, it doesn't matter. In fact, even on single target, the difference between Mark of the Claw and Mark of the Trained Soldier is incredibly close, and it almost doesn't even matter. Just pick whichever one you have, or whichever one you think you can min-max better with. In my case, I want to be picking Mark of the Claw for the haste proc. Normally, it's your goal to get up to over 100% mastery as Affliction. Next patch, it's not really that bad, as long as you don't let a crit go too far ahead of haste or mastery, and you don't let haste, and you try to keep haste and mastery balanced as much as possible. Okay, so how is this going to affect our legendaries and our gear? Alright, if you're running a Siphon Life build, which I'll probably be doing just for the consistency and the mobility, you're still going to be using Master Harvester. That's one of your best legendaries. But it's really up in the air between Strut and Sleepless Shackles or the Agony Helmet. In fact, the Agony Helmet's good in a lot of ways, because not many things that we have gear-wise give that much mastery. The thing is, the Agony Helmet is great when you need to stack your Agony and get it out, especially when you're running with Writhe and Agony. However, and this is a big thing, the tier 22 piece makes it to where your Corruption has I believe a 1 to 1.5 procs per minute, and it's on RPPM instead of an Agony counter, but Corruption has a chance to generate a Soul Shard whenever it deals damage, making Absolute Corruption incredibly strong. And you would think, oh, you just go Mastery crit stacking. No, not really. You'd still use Haste Mastery. And it's mainly because there's, like, a lot of single target fights in Tomb of Sargeras that if you spec Haste and you play progression on, like, and you're on progression using a spec like Demonology for the single target fights and Affliction for the cleave, you'll be doing fine because you can just use the same gear. As far as your trinkets go, like, your best one, like, mainly is the Whispers in the Dark for the haste proc, but Charm of the Rising Tide is really good. A lot of people really overlook that trinket for Affliction, especially on, like, 3 to 4 plus targets, because you can just get your Agonies out, throw Absolute Corruption, and just presto, free damage. 4-piece makes it to where whenever you spend a Soul Shard, i.e. on Unstable Affliction or Seed of Corruption, it has a 25% chance to grant you 15% haste for 8 seconds. And a lot of people, and in a way that does seem to devalue haste, but I think it does something a little different. It gives us a little reason to have a little bit more haste, so we can use just Demonology gear. For the most part, like, again, these stats aren't final, but from what we're seeing, it seems haste is pulling ahead in multiple target, especially since you'll be having so many dots out. Haste, it's generally it's a really good stat because it affects your Soul Shard generation, because it reduces the duration window of each dot, so they're ticking really quick. They're not doing a lot of damage, like, unless you have a shitload of mastery and can justify it. For the most part, you want your haste and mastery still to be balanced next patch. So as long as you have stuff that gives you haste, you'll be fine. But the Master Harvester is the best legendary because it actually compounds and affects the Soul Harvest buff. So let's say you have Agony out on one target. Let's say your fight's Goroth, and you have this legendary. Well, you throw Agony, wait for it to get up to 10 to 15 stacks, whichever talent you're running, of course, and then you pop Soul Harvest, and you just spam Unstable Affliction, waiting for the chance that it gives you your Soul Harvest increase. This used to be a 10% chance, and it's been nerfed to 9%, which I think it could, like, I don't really think it was necessary, but I can see why, because potentially you could have, like, a really huge ass soul harvest window for like over a minute. One thing I wanted to talk about was just general legendaries. Like, let's say you're playing Destruction, right? Your best legendaries are pretty much the same. Like, by and large, the best legendary for just about every case is the Destruction Warlock as the Lessons of Space-Time. The next best bet for just general every purpose is the Ferritory of Souls. However, I don't think this is going to be as needed considering Destruction generates Soul Shard bits baseline, or really Soul Shard fragments. So what my guess would be is either for single target or even really cleave if you have Soul Harvest still, is the Master Harvester. For Destruction, Soul Harvest is a really huge buff, so this would be a good thing, especially since Soul Harvest is good for your burst window. Another good thing that you can use is the Soul of the Netherlord, because that'll give you your Eradication. Another good one for like Mythic Pluses and shit is Safuz, if you can reliably proc it every 30 seconds. And, of course, the two best for Destruction are the Lessons of Space-Time and Sindori Spite, which has a 3-minute ICD. And what do I mean by that? Well, basically, once you cast Summon Doomguard or Inferno in Destruction, you and your minion will deal 15% increased damage for 25 seconds, and you can only gain the effect once every 3 minutes. Now, with Destruction's Lord of the Flames, you can still cast Summon Doomguard pretty much throughout the fight, but you won't be benefiting from the Lord of Flames until the 10 minutes have passed, which on cooldown you can get at least 2 Lord of the Flames and several uses of Sindori. Okay. Demonology, let's talk about its legendaries. Recurrent Ritual has been slightly nerfed for Destruction, but like Demonology already has a huge shard gain right now, especially with the meme build going around, that Recurrent Ritual is not as mandatory as it used to be. In fact, if anything, I would say use Wakener's Loyalty and Sindori Spite, or Master Harvester Sindori Spite, or even Soul of the Netherlord in there. Because Grimoire of Synergy is still really good for demo logs. Grimoire of Synergy is still good, even though it's been nerfed. It's still an effective talent to use. Another thing that stirred a little bit of controversy was when Kil'jaeden's Burning Wish was sitting really high, and probably, I think, one of the best trinkets for Destruction, at least according to Pyromancer. That's not true at all, because Kil'jaeden's Burning Wish is on use, 1 minute 15 seconds. It's good for AoE, but the stat stick on it's pretty mediocre compared to other sticks that you could get. Like, it's a good trinket, it's just, there's a lot better out there. Like, I think Destruction and Demo probably could get a lot of use out of Norgannon's Foresight, because movements has always been a huge issue for Destruction, and once this expansion was released, it became an even bigger issue for Demonology, because most of our spells, we really couldn't cast maybe like 1 or 2 spells on the move, 3 if you count Grimoire of Service, and your Guardians, your Doomguard and Infernal. Norgannon's Foresight probably going to be an incredibly strong legendary for Demo and Destro in particular, because it'll allow them to react to movement windows. Other than that, I can't really say too much, because there's always all sorts of shit that could go wrong. But as far as the tier sets go, and really just as far as progression is concerned, play Affliction, or just play whatever you're good at and play whatever you have legendaries for. If you're a Destro Beast and you love Destruction, play Destruction. If you love Affliction like myself and a lot of other people, play Affliction, because odds are you most likely just have legendaries for Affliction. If you like Demonology and just a Demonology Beast like Not, then play Demonology. Like, this is the one instance where I can say the Warlocks are arguably the most balanced that they've ever been, and that's a really wonderful thing, because it's kind of like, uh, there was that one time in Cataclysm, where you could just, like, play whatever. Um, but, yeah, um, this is a really good thing we got going here. And especially considering that two bosses drop perdition relics, which I think one of them is the Desolate Host. Yeah, you get the Highborn Skull from the Desolate Host, which is a perdition relic, and then you get the blood slot perdition relic from Maiden of Vigilance. So two bosses, one after the other, drop perdition relics, and that's going to be really good for AF, since you don't have to go back to Trial of Valor and farm. As far as your legendaries go, if you're using Master Harvester and um, a power cord, you want the helmet, the shoulders, the gloves, and the pants. The helmet gives a decent amount of mastery at normal, like 600 to 700 mastery. It's not bad. The gloves could use a little bit more mastery. I don't really like that high amount of versatility on there, but that's just me. But the pants give a really good amount of mastery, so that's always going to be good. And I don't have power cord, but I have straight and sleeveless shackles since I don't have another bracer to replace it with. So this is good for sort of single target or like cleaving unstable afflictions. Plus, your legendaries are going to be different if you run Siphon Life. For Siphon Life, it's going to be the hood and the chest. So, Agony Helmet, chest piece are the absolute best for running a Writhe and Agony AC and Siphon Life build. But if you're on the Soul Conduit, it doesn't matter any of these right here really. As long as you're using Soul Conduit, it's going to be the chest and the belt. Right. So let's take a little bit and like really try to figure out why haste is so much better for Affliction right now. Mainly, it's got to do with the fact that the fight's Affliction stronger on our cleave and multiple targets, where we can just reliably keep up a high amount of rapid consumption. And anytime you're using like AoE, like let's say you're using Sow the Seeds on those fights, you're going to be really favoring haste a lot more than every other stat, really. Phantom Singularity, it doesn't really favor haste, but it's not buffed by mastery either, so it doesn't really seem to make much of a difference. Like, you can run, like, whatever stat combination you want with PS. Soul Harvest is more of a mastery stat, but it's more of a mastery favor, because it buffs all of your damage, including your pet and your dots. Personally, on like fights where I can like use like really cheese multiple targets, I'm just gonna run with Sow the Seeds or Phantom, depending on what I need. If I need the burst, I'll just go with Phantom Singularity. If I need the sustained cleave, I'll go with Sow the Seeds. Really, for Affliction, since we have like a viable talent built for every single encounter, just look at the fight and go with what you can um, tell from the fight. Like, if it's a fight that has a lot of AoE up constantly, then Sow the Seeds is going to be better. But if it has, like, intermittent add cleave every 40 seconds, then you take Phantom Singularity and Soul Conduit and just forget everything. Like, Contagion will be good on those fights since you can just cheese it. And for level 15, they're essentially equal. Like, you can play Haunt, you can play Malefic Grasp, and you can play Writhe and Agony. Haunt I really wouldn't recommend on, like, static single target because Malefic Grasp just has it beat. But anytime there's movement involved in single target, which most of the fights for single target will involve movement, so sad days for Malefic Grasp, but good days for Writhe and Agony and Haunt, you can use those and sort of go with a build kind of like this. Another thing, Grimoire of Service will, I don't think it'll be like the best, but I think it will have some uses at least, because a lot of the trinkets that are in this raid really line up, especially this trinket here. It lines up perfectly with Grimoire of Service. And I know normally Grimoire of Service is just absolutely dog shit, but if you have something that lines up with it, and that's always important to note about things like Grimoire of Service and and on-use trinkets is they generally always line up. So you can just make a macro for it and just use your Grimoire of Service demon every minute and 30 seconds, provided you have shards, which I assume we're going to be, like, in shard generation is really good. So Grimoire of Service might be a good contender for potential single target use. Other than that, or we're just still sticking with Supremacy, but I really do, a part of me really does want to see the Fell Hunter again, because it is a good pet. It's got some really good interaction with our dots, so it'll be good to see. And that's about all I can think of from right now, unless you want me to go over the cosmetic glyphs for the Warlock, which just give you soul shards floating around you, or burning embers, or whatever. Um, Honestly, that's just cosmetic. It's not going to increase your DPS. It's kind of like the glyph of Wrathguard. It looks better than the regular Felguard, but it's not gonna. It does the same damage in the end, so it doesn't really matter. Um, in terms of like pure single target, where you can reliably just get cooldowns off every time they're up, you're going to be running with Grimoire Service and Soul Conduit, as well as whatever combination of these. Like pure single target where you can just not really have to move, no contest. This is probably going to be it. Any kind of AoE, then you always take Supremacy. Any kind of fights where there's more than one target, you take Supremacy because Sacrifice doesn't do enough damage to even justify picking it. It's like maybe 35,000 shatter damage to a target and any other enemy within 8 yards, and it lasts 1 hour until you summon a demon. It's like if it was like 7.1 and we were using like 703 or 7.1, you could justify using Sacrifice because it was just so weird. It was just so fun to cheese it. Um, Personally, I'm probably going with this setup in most cases, except replace Service with Grimoire of Supremacy. Um, the Fell Hunter has the Fell Hunter has amazing interaction with our dots. So really, in this case, with Grimoire of Service, you take Siphon Life regardless because it's just going to give you another dot. You could even throw Haunt in there because it technically acts as a dot, but really any of these three are really equal. But I think Writhe and Agony is going to have the most practical use. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I have a Patreon. I'm going to get that set up at some point as well, so bear with me. And yeah, thank you guys, and I'll do another stream here soon. All right, peace.